Is this where Waldo first shows up?
More or less. He'd been around for... I was using him even before I got published a little bit, just because, I couldn't draw that well, and I figured I could finesse a cartoon cat better than I could human figures.
Rubber hoses is fairly easy.
Yeah. I mean, that's why they use so many black cats in old cartoons. They're really easy to draw. That's where it started anyway.
Welcome to Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. I'm Jonathan Friedmann.
And I'm Joey Angelfield.
Producer-engineer Mike Tomren is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim, Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Jewish Museum of the American West, and Atheists United Studios. Hey, Joey. People have been telling stories through pictures since the caveman days. But few have told stories in pictures of how they tell stories through pictures. That's where today's guest comes in.
We're honored to talk with Kim Deitch, a prolific cartoonist who's been making comics since the underground movement of the 1960s. His latest book is How I Make Comics, published by Fantagraphics. Kim, welcome to Amusing Jews.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Your father, Gene, was an animator for UPA and Terrytoons. What was his influence on you growing up?
Oh, it was huge. Just the whole idea that, there's something great about leading a creative life. Yeah, it was just pressed into me from the very beginning. And, I was very lucky. Both of my parents were really fascinating people. And it couldn't have worked out better for me. Sad to say later on they were divorced, but that just seemed to be what was going on in those days.
Was it kind of magical to be raised around art supplies?
It was magical, yes. In fact, for a while, my father was doing a comic strip. When you're drawing comics, it can get a little lonesome. You're happy to have somebody come around and talk to you. And I think my father's strip, not only did it obviously push me in that direction, but it just brought us closer together.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I had a great childhood, and there's no getting around it. Later on, they broke up, and, it wasn't so great for my younger brothers, but for me, it really was kind of magical.
You were one of the pioneers of underground comics. How did you get involved in that scene?
Well, my younger brother, Simon, was a big comic book collector, and so I was in this wonderful position as he got all these great old Golden Age comics to thrill and pore over it, not to mention Marvel comics that were coming out. And I thought, well, geez, Marvel Comics is never going to hire me. But, I was showing my stuff to some of my colleagues at one of my straight jobs, and I was going, this comics thing really fascinates me, but I'm not sure I can really draw well enough to cut the mustard on that. And so this one guy said, well, I don't know. It's better than Captain High. And I said, Captain High, what's that? And he explained to me that was a comic strip that was coming out in an underground newspaper called the East Village Other. I went and took a look at them. I think I could compete with this. And so with about $500 saved up, I went down to the Lower East Side to see what I could do for myself. And, it was pretty interesting. When I brought my work in the first time, and the guy at East Village Other said, well, this is pretty good, but of course we're looking for something more psychedelic, the big buzzword of the time. I thought, well, okay, I got to find a way to stay alive anyway. So it turned out that one of the people working at the East Village Other, who did Captain High, said that, come over and see me. Maybe I have some work for you. Well, the work he had for me was he was dealing dope. And he sold me a lid of grass for openers. And so, it was opportune because, $500 isn't going to last so long, even though I was only paying $38.50 a month. Right. But boy, I didn't know the ropes about the Lower East Side. I had to learn it all the hard way. But yeah, I started dealing dope, and I started, smoking some of that dope, get more psychedelic, brought 3 comic strips that I'd done under those circumstances back to the East Village Other. And they flipped for them. Not like they were going to pay me or anything, but they were willing to publish them. And it was almost the most incredible thing that happened to me in those early days. Actually, the more incredible thing was about a year later, after I'd had my ups and downs with the East Village Other, the original owner, Walter Bowert, married one of the richest women in the United States and was gone. And the new guy that took over, said, Kim would like to have you back. And he said, wait a minute, somebody get Spain, my old friend Spain. Come in here, Spain. And he said, Spain, don't I pay you $40 a week to do a comic strip and otherwise do stuff on Paste Up Night and stuff? And he said, yeah, man, sure do. And then he pointed to me and said, that could be you too. And that was my big break, Not only was I going to be working for the East Village Other again, but I was going to get paid $40 a week. Plus there was all kinds of fringe benefits. We could charge art supplies and stuff. We could go down to the Steve Paul scene and see all the big rock and roll stars. It was fantastic. What can I say?
Did you have any formal art training, or was it all picked up along the way?
Well, besides watching my father make comics, at a certain point, it was time for me to graduate from high school. And my mother said, well, Kim, you're graduating from high school. What do you think you want to do? And I said, well, Ma, I'd kind of like to maybe just bum around and, like that. She said, that didn't go over big, so I put in 2 years at Pratt Institute. I almost flunked out the first year. The second year, I kind of had it all together, and I guess I could have gone on. But then one day I was out drinking at a bar, and I bumped into this guy. It was a Norwegian seaman, and he told me about how easy it was to ship out in the Merchant Marine. That sounded like that would really be something to see a little bit of the world. Plus, all those prostitutes and stuff, So that's what happened. I ended up got out to Japan, which was like just where a 20-year-old guy wants to be, and that was pretty great. I kept up my union dues for several years after that, but then the East Village Other happened. I was actually back at Pratt Institute for a while. I thought, well, maybe in night school I could get my degree and see where that took me. I didn't have to do that. Instead, pretty soon I'm making $40 a week at the East Village Other. That was a great, it doesn't sound like much. That was a great opportunity, and I made it all I could out of it.
Well, that's like 4 times your monthly rent, so that was a significant amount of money.
Yeah, well, it didn't stay $38.50. Finally, that place, I ended up at a place that was like $50 a week. But then my friend Spain, who was working at the East Village Other, he wanted someplace to live, so he said, "Hey, man, why don't you let me move in with you?" And boy, that's when things were really happening. And it really was happening. I mean, I was incredibly lucky. What can I tell you?
Where did that psychedelic style come from? Because when they told you needed to draw in a more psychedelic way,
I was selling weed, so I was smoking a lot of it too.
I know there's sort of a stereotypical archetypal image of psychedelica or whatever you might call it. Did that originate with any individual, or was that just kind of a collective thing?
I think it was just kind of a collective thing. The interesting thing that influenced art a lot, though, was me, like, Vaughn Baudet. You remember him? The thing about that was all the graffiti you see these days and that style. I think they got a lot of it from Vaughn Baudet. It's very similar.
Yeah, I think even if they don't realize that's where it's coming from, it's sort of seeped into the culture.
Every time I see something down the street like that, Vaughn, poor bastard. he came to the city, and the whole thing is, he live up Hebrews, Troy, I think in Troy, upstate New York, and was a pretty straight guy, and he just wasn't ready for the whole hippie thing. Well, then he finally got ready, it turned into a transvestite and all. And God, he was dead at about the age of 34. It was really tragic because he was a nice guy too. The East Village Other decided to have an all comics magazine. At first, they left him in charge of it, but he just came to me. He said, "Kim, I can't take it. I mean, this is just too much for me." This even before he's a transvestite. And so the boss at Evo, he just said, "Come into the room here." He said, "Listen, we got this magazine going. Guess what? You're the editor." And I said, "You got another guy's name on there, and Peter Legere is the editor." He said, "Listen, my offer to you is he doesn't even see the magazine until it's printed." So I gave it a shot, so suddenly from $40 a week, if I could do all the work, I was making $90 a week, except it was a rare week when I actually did everything. And my boss, Joey, take great pleasure in docking me down to about $50 a week. But let me tell you, he was a great guy. And to this day, I honor his memory. As if anybody gave me a break in this world, in the biz, it was him.
Enjoying the show? Click like and subscribe.
Is it fair to say that you share an interest in Lost Americana with fellow underground legend Robert Crumb?
Oh, yeah, I've always been kind of interested in the old days and the old times and nostalgia, if you will. That's certainly true.
Was that maybe a product of your exposure to Golden Age comics, or was there stuff in your home like growing up?
Everything just worked out kind of magically for me in terms of influences, and my upbringing and all the sadder that, somehow it didn't work out so good for my brother Simon, who got me into it and is now dead, and my brother Seth, who isn't exactly doing great financially. I've been a lucky bastard. What can I tell you? And I'm grateful. I'm very grateful. I've had advantages. I've tried to make the most of them. Still at it. Miraculous.
You still seem to be pretty prolific.
I'd like to think so. Yeah, I know. If I stop, what will I do? It's like, and besides, it's fascinating. I definitely want to keep doing it. I'm working on something right over there at the computer. I'm doing a lot of Photoshop right now on a story that it's about how I got my start in art, actually. It'll probably be about, I don't know, 47 pages. I'm not exactly sure, because I've sort of put it on hold while I'm doing a bunch of color stuff for that story, because I got a nice opportunity over in France to have a book put out of what I'm doing right now. So things are a little unusual at the moment, but the work is happening, and couldn't be happier about that.
In a Comics Journal interview you did several years ago, you described your style as an attempt at trying to draw as realistically as possible and being basically a primitive artist. That's just what comes out. Does that description still hold?
It's a fair thing. I like to think I'm getting to be a better drawer, but I wasn't trying to be cute when I said that. It's just a fair, introspective, trying to give a straight answer to what you see from me, and still working on it. I think I'm getting better as an artist. I don't know, but it was never. I was always going to be, a writer who draws, and not the other way around. I think that's fair to say also.
How do you describe that sort of positioning, a writer who draws? Could you elaborate a little on that?
Well, it just means that I think that's my bigger skill. And when I was younger and I was just getting ready to go to Pratt Institute. I went over to the Czech Republic to visit my father. And he said, Kim, when I was your age, I could draw circles around you. Are you sure this is really what you want to do? Well, I wasn't really sure, but I said, yeah, Dad. I mean, I think I got something going on with that. And thank God it sort of seemed to be true because it did put a little doubt in my mind. But I mean, at least he lived long enough to see I made a go of it, which I'm very proud of, because what if he'd lived long enough to see I didn't make a go of it? That wouldn't be so hot. So, he was a great guy too. I miss him.
I think in alternative comics in particular, it's almost more important to have a distinctive style than to be perfect in your drawing anyway. So the way that you approach it, I mean, I can recognize your work whenever I'm flipping through something. And so, the fact that it's not photorealistic or you're not copying anybody else's style is just coming from your own imagination. That certainly comes through.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's me trying to do the best I can as an artist. And thank God somebody else likes it too. Where would it be otherwise, So it's been really fantastic and still is.
What can you tell us about your new, very meta book, How I Make Comics?
The thing about that was when I made that title up, I just thought it was a fun title. I thought, and I was telling people for a long time, well, look, that's just a catchy title I came up with because it's not really a how-to book. But, it is sort of a how-to book because, what's going on in the book, it's me pitching one story after another to my wife, and which is exactly what goes on around here. Usually it happens on Saturday mornings. And so really, it is how I make comics, much to my own personal surprise. And so, yeah, subconsciously, I must have realized this was more spot on than I was really giving myself credit for initially.
How I Make Comics gives us a front row seat to your creative process in a way I haven't seen before. In the sense that you are even going back and revising comics based on your wife's feedback and all of that as well.
She's practically a collaborator. I mean, it's really very close to being like that, I mean, she's smart, very creative herself, That's my greatest fortune of all in this world, that I'm married to this terrific woman.
Were you at all self-conscious about putting so much of your brain on the page?
Not really. I mean, if I see a good angle for a story, man, I'm going to go for it. Because they're not that easy to come up with. But, so look, hey. And like I say, about every Saturday morning, I show Pam everything I've been doing. Because she's a good judge. And if it isn't working for her, then I know I'm in trouble. And, maybe I'll do something. Maybe I can figure out something to do about that. So it's very much a collaborative thing in this house.
And did Fantagraphics just give you a blank slate and say whatever you do is fine with us?
Pretty much. Gary Groth is a great guy to work for, and I feel tremendous loyalty towards him because, I've had them all. I've had good, bad, and different. Gary's really something. And I'll be there working for him as long as he wants me working for him. I'm not going to, I did jump ship. I went to Pantheon Books for a couple of books, but even then, it's sort of funny, so I had a book coming out with Pantheon, but I was also doing one with Fantagraphics. The Fantagraphics book was better. So that taught me something too. No, they're wonderful people at Fantagraphics, and Gary is a terrific guy.
It does seem to be like a one-of-one kind of experience for artists who work at or work with Fantagraphics, in the sense that they're very nurturing. They want to support what you're doing. They're not as concerned about sales as maybe some other publishers. They just want art.
Because, it's not like I'm a world beater of selling, but all in all, it seems to be getting a little better. So, but no, all hail Fantagraphics, Gary Groth. As long as they're there for me, I'm there for them. And, yeah, maybe I go off and do this or that for somebody else, but not in any permanent way. I mean, I'm just so amazed I'm still doing it at all.
You end the book with an interesting concept, proactive humility. Could you explain?
Well, it's simply explained. I mean, to me, what proactive humility means is you want to be humble, but you don't want to be so humble that you're putting yourself out of business. Oh, gee, where am I? I'm nothing. And then suddenly you're nothing. So yeah. Humble, okay, great. But, humble working too. That's all that really means. I coined that phrase. I'm very proud of that. But I don't know if we'll catch on or not, but it has a meaning, it's explainable. So, there's that.
Are you humbled by your own career? I know that you're grateful that you're still doing it, but the fact that you are still doing it and that you can look back at your catalog of all the work you've done over the years, is that a humbling thing?
I think so. I'm very grateful for the way everything's worked out. And, I got behind it. Got to get behind your luck, of course. No. I've had a terrific life. And I got a terrific wife. I mean, what more do you want? You could want more, but, it gets a little ridiculous at a certain point.
Well, thanks so much, Kim, for joining us.
My pleasure. I enjoyed myself.
And to our audience, now back to your regularly scheduled lives.
Amusing Jews is here to amuse you. If you like being amused, go ahead and click like and subscribe.
See you later, baby.